Hello, I'm Ryan,
And I'm Brody.
and this is the High Volatility Experience.
Hey Ryan, we're back here again, but I gotta say, I have to apologize. I was a bit late. There were 1,400 Teslas on the road today. All were bought with Dogecoin, and really it got me thinking, what is up with EVs in America and overall all over the world? What's up with that? A couple of weeks back, we said we would be talking about EVs in the next episode. So here we are, and we promise this isn't going to be just a Tesla pump.
So, Brody, why exactly are we talking about EVs?
Well, right now we're looking at the market that seems to have endless possibilities by the looks of what's currently going on. It seems like EVs are really the face of the future. Currently, the global market cap for electric vehicles amounts to around $800 billion, with a projected 8,500 patents filed last year in relation to EV development and technology, according to Statista. Tesla, I know we said we weren't going to just pump Tesla, but it's kind of hard right now. Tesla, the face of EVs, as well as now being the most valued automaker by market cap, has increased its delivery by nearly 5 times since 2017, from 103,000 vehicles sold that year to 500,000 last year. And they're ramping up both their production and their revenue.
Right, so aside from the Tesla pump, Tesla is just one example, but currently we're looking at substantial investments by the government into the industry as a whole. President Biden's 2.3 trillion American jobs plan allocates a whopping $174 billion to promote EVs and charging stations. Specific directives include increasing incentives to buy EVs provided by new consumer rebates or incentives. President Biden is reportedly looking to expand tax credits, for example, for people who purchase EVs. Now, currently consumers can qualify for up to $7,500 upon purchasing an all-electric or hybrid electric vehicle, but these incentives are reduced for automakers such as GM or Tesla because they've already sold more than 200,000 vehicles. So you're not only looking at raising the tax credit, but also potentially raising the limit cap on when the incentives phase out after automakers have sold a certain amount of EVs.
Furthermore, another directive is to install 500,000 new charging stations to obviously make charging EVs more widely accessible and more convenient. The US currently only has less than 29,000 public EV chargers, so you can see how significant of an increase this really is. Then, take the 500,000 proposed EV chargers and compare that to the currently existing only 136,000 gas stations in the US. President Biden wants a lot of charging stations. In fact, consider the numbers, and it's pretty clear President Biden wants to make EVs more of a mainstream method of transportation, holistically, as a part of his plan to reduce global carbon emissions.
Right. I mean, President Biden's made it clear that reducing carbon emissions is going to be one of his top priority goals, but making EVs more conventional, however, is really easier said than done. Within the US, EVs only account for 2% of the vehicle market, while they account for about 2.2% of the global vehicle market share. And globally, only one in every 250 cars driven on the road are EVs. So, needless to say, it seems like we need to take some extra large steps towards incentivizing electric vehicles, right?
Exactly right, Ryan. I'm going to take this opportunity to insert a little fun fact here. The country with the most EVs per capita is actually Norway, with one electric vehicle per every 18.9 people, with the US coming in second at one electric vehicle per every 46.8 people. In 2020, plug-in EVs accounted for a whopping 74.8% of light vehicle sales in Norway. Again, in comparison to 2% for the US, why is that?
So, in Norway, owning an automobile is actually very, very expensive. There's heavy import duties and high vehicle registration taxes. Furthermore, the amount of taxes you pay upon purchasing a vehicle in Norway is determined by how much pollution the car will cause to the environment. In essence, the stronger the engine, the higher taxes you pay, further de-incentivizing owning automobiles that rely on internal combustion engines. So, all of this makes owning a car much more expensive in Norway than in the US. So, what the Norway government has done is actually to use all of this as a heavy leverage to magnify possible incentives for purchasing EVs. In Norway, for example, EVs are exempt from all of the import duties and the registrations that I just talked about. And furthermore, they also pay lower parking and toll fees as well by up to 50%. So, as you can see, the whole point of making EVs more appealing is to lower their costs below the cost of owning an internal combustion engine vehicle. But the question is that the case in the US? And if not, is it possible to mimic the policies in Norway?
That's a really good question, Ryan. The first question is difficult to answer because there are so many factors to consider that can easily be different per individual. First, considering the premium of the cars. According to the Natural Resources Defense Council, the average price of an electric vehicle is about $19,000 higher than an average gas-powered vehicle, so you have to look for similar models. I found an article that compared the price and basic maintenance costs associated with two parallel automobiles, the Hyundai Kona and the Hyundai Kona Electric. After considering factors such as price, fuel versus charging costs, some maintenance costs, and depreciation over a 3-year period, the analysis found that it costs about $8,000 more to own an electric variant of the Hyundai. And this is after applying a $7,500 tax credit, which doesn't apply to every electric vehicle.
That's really interesting. And I'd say furthermore, a lot of the analysis doesn't account for is like individual questions like oil changes or potential battery replacements as their capacity drains after extended usage. And I think this is especially important because the battery is actually the most expensive part of an electric vehicle, accounting for about 30% of the costs for consumers according to Bloomberg. So I think the biggest problem is that the most popular EVs don't have gas engine counterparts, so we really can't make an effective one-to-one comparison here.
Right. There's not an internal combustion engine variant of the Tesla Model 3, for example, which was the best-selling electric vehicle worldwide, selling about 365,000 units last year, according to Statista. How do you compare that? Now, as for answering the second question regarding policies, first consider again that EVs currently only account for 2% of the vehicle market in the United States specifically. Then consider that no states currently have a carbon emissions tax. Then say you suddenly raise the price it costs to maintain your gas-powered vehicle drastically in favor of supporting what is still really a fractional market. I'd say that would result in a catastrophe, not only for businesses as they try to shift production, but for the people as well. But that's just my opinion.
All right, Brody, let's just toss aside your financially woke analysis associated with the costs of owning a gas-powered vehicle versus an EV for a second. Let's just say, hypothetically, you were a consumer completely indifferent to purchase or maintenance costs, and you were solely worried about the impact on the environment. Let's say you're an avid environmentalist and you're willing to take the best steps necessary towards minimizing pollution and carbon emissions. Do EVs still have the advantage here?
Well, Ryan, it's pretty well known that internal combustion engine vehicles produce greenhouse gases. This is due to their burning of different chemicals and oils in order to make the car move. EVs are different because instead of having to use chemicals and fire to make the car go, the charge in the battery is applied to the wheels when the throttle is pushed. This causes the car to move. This is a long way of saying that electric cars do not produce greenhouse gases. However, this does not mean that EVs are naturally better for the environment. In order to conclusively state the environmental damage caused by an electric vehicle, an analysis of their production and overall entire life cycle of the car must be considered.
Oh, absolutely. And we found some pretty surprising things. In order to produce an electric vehicle, raw materials obviously must be extracted and transported to a factory. Now, Roskill Information Services estimates that the CO2 emissions from lithium are expected to triple by 2025. Now, what's the significance of that? Lithium-ion batteries are used in electric cars due to their high capacity capabilities. But some negative externalities have been created due to production. According to Industry Week, the actual making of a lithium-ion battery could emit 74% more carbon dioxide than conventional gas-powered vehicles. Now, of course, once they're in operation, they emit less. None, actually. But this seems like a huge factor, right?
Roskill also stated that lithium production has led to excess water usage, chemical contamination, and poor relations with indigenous groups. Moreover, the transportation of lithium to China for refining purposes also creates mass CO2 pollution. This is because Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile, which are in South America, make up the lithium triangle, where 47 million tons of lithium are buried in the ground. Furthermore, electric vehicles are made from rare earth elements like lithium, nickel, and graphite, which all have side effects. Producing 1 ton of these rare earth elements produces 75 tons of waste.
Wow, so what I seem to be understanding is most of the damage associated with EVs actually lies within the production and manufacturing phase rather than the operating phase. So, as demand increases for these electric vehicles, there definitely has to be more sustainable methods for production that must be identified to prevent more damage from occurring, right?
Well, in my opinion, Ryan, electric vehicles have a long way to go, though recently we're seeing a lot of development. States like California have said that they're going to stop the selling of internal combustion engines by 2030, and there are a lot of other policies that are in place that follow this sort of ideology of cutting the overall market for internal combustion engines given a certain amount of time. So there's a lot of development that needs to happen specifically with EVs also. When you look at the environmental damage that we just talked about, you need to consider about how can you make this less harmful to the environment, because you can't have the demand growing for electric vehicles but also have them possibly doing more damage to the environment than what you're trying to fix. That's just counterintuitive. So I would like to see where this goes down the road. I think a lot of planning and a lot of new ideas and innovation need to come through, and overall just policy, and there's a lot of different things that need to go into making this work, but I think it's possible. What do you have to say on this, Ryan?
Well, Brody, I agree with a lot of what you said, specifically with there has to be a step-taking process, right? I mean, you're still looking at a minority market despite all the growth that we're seeing right now. The other 98% of the market is still internal combustion engine vehicles. So we can't take drastic steps. Again, like Brody said, that would be a catastrophe in our opinions at least. But this is certainly an interesting process, but something important I think with electric vehicles is, again, like Brody and I were just discussing, the environmental factors. That's sort of like the main appeal of electric vehicles, right? But if you take that away, we were just talking about how producing these lithium ion batteries, the extracting of all these rare earth elements that go into the actual production of an electric vehicle are actually still very damaging to the environment. So if you take away that positive environmental factor, you sort of omit a large part of what the whole appeal of electric vehicles really are. So I think what we really have to do right now is not only invest in conventionalizing EVs, but also somehow reducing the amount of waste that goes into the production of EVs. The operating phase is fine, but it's, again, more so the production and manufacturing phase.
All right. That concludes our analysis of electric vehicles in the United States and all around the world. I'm Brody. I'll see you next time.
Wait a minute, Brody. Don't forget about me. But anyways, thanks for listening, and please stay tuned for the next episode of the High Volatility Experience.